welcome back to my channel. I'm delighted to announce that as of the date of this video going live, the Headrush 2.4 update is now available for all Headrush devices. To demonstrate this new firmware, I have the brand new Headrush MX5, which I've never used. I'm using it for the first time with this new firmware. Those of you who follow the channel will know I'm an avid Pedalboard user, so I'm really eager to see how this thing performs. Now, I have been fortunate enough to have gotten this firmware early, pre-release. Headrush were kind enough to get in touch with me and offer me the final build of the firmware ahead of its official release date. So I've spent a few days now playing around with it, and I have to say I think metal players are going to be absolutely delighted with this update. Headrush, in giving me the firmware, did not tell me I had to say anything good about it whatsoever. There really was no strings attached, so what you're going to get are my totally honest and unfiltered thoughts, having spent 3 or 4 days playing with it and having just recorded a playthrough of one of my songs with it as well, which you can hear an intro on this video. Now here is a full list of all the updates that come in 2.4. I'm not going to be going through all of them today because quite honestly, all of them aren't really kind of applicable to me. There is some bass stuff in there, there's a bunch of pedals, and there is a brand new amp profile in there. So we're going to focus on kind of what I know best really, which is metal stuff. High gain, aggressive tones, but also clean kind of ambient stuff at the other end of the spectrum, which is also my bag. First and foremost, probably the biggest addition to the 2.4 firmware is a new profile of the Engel Powerball Mark II head. Now, this is an interesting choice from Headrush, really. It's probably not my first choice if I would have been able to pick an amp to add to the range within Headrush. But I must say, it really is something in addition to what's already there, I think. Having spent a few days with it, it offers something different to what already was in the Headrush in terms of metal. You had your 5150 rectifiers, you had some Marshall stuff, Mesa Mark II, so it definitely is something fresh. Now, the Engel kind of sound is something I'm quite familiar with as it happens, because the band I was in when I was younger, the lead guitarist of ours had a half stack Engel, and I spent years having my hearing utterly destroyed by that half stack. It was such a beast. This was when Engel sort of had just come out, and you know, we were all just blown away by the sound of the Fireball and the Powerball, and it had such a roar and a tightness to it. So I'm very familiar with what Engel amps offer. It's really quite a dry sound. It's kind of unforgiving in that there is such an amount of clarity offered by Engel heads that if your playing sucks, there's nowhere to hide, unfortunately. I'm not actually sure what Headrush's process is for modeling amps, but they must have had their work cut out with the Powerball, because it's a lot more complicated than most straightforward metal heads. It's a 4-channel amplifier, and it has some really strange additional controls to what you'd normally find on any kind of high gain amp. There's bright switches, there's depth punch knobs, there's bottom boosts, there's all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff in there. And I am delighted to say that all 4 channels are represented in the 2.4 update. They are all different amp models, and they all also come with all those weird plethora of controls faithful to the Powerball head. So there's 3 rigs that I've actually made with the 2.4 update. that I'm going to take you through now. They all involve the new Engel amp head, but they also, well, all but one, involve the brand new S1 drive pedal that forms part of this update too. Now that is a model based on the Boss Super Overdrive pedal, and it works really well with this new Engel amp model. So as usual, all three of these rigs are available as free downloads in the description of this video, no messing around at all. Just make sure that you have updated to the latest firmware before you download these rigs. So let's check out the rig that I've been having some fun with since Headrush sent me this update. So I've built this rig here using the high lead channel of the Powerball model, which is the highest gain one. I really haven't had to do very much to it, okay? The settings I've got are the S1 drive, set max level, max tone, no drive, classic settings there. A basic noise gate. Now there is a noise gate actually included within the amp model on this, which again is a faithful reproduction of what the genuine amp head offers. So you can use the built-in gate just in the amp head if you want, which is great because potentially that will save you some DSP because you won't need to use an additional block just for a noise gate if you don't want to. And as usual, I'm using good old faithful, which is my go-to IR for all rigs, no matter clean, distorted, I just always find it works. And that is the free 2-off Pres 5 IR that's freely available online anywhere. Bit of low cut, bit of high cut, real basic stuff. So here's how it sounds. It's just wild, like proper dry, nasty, like chainsaw type distortion, which, you know, it definitely has that like Engel roar that I'm so familiar with. Absolutely sick, and like I said, very minimal messing around to get a nice thick nasty metal tone that sounds good in the room. I'll just take you through the amp settings I've used, really basic stuff, just working the EQ. I do have the bottom boost engaged, as you can see. Not a lot else there. Depth punch has just been left at the mid. I've got the gate turned all the way off because I am using a separate noise gate in this signal chain. So regular viewers of the channel will know that all my kind of original music I've written, I've used the Headrush to record with, and I have always used a 5150 based rig to record that. Now, as a general rule, when I record with a real amp, the Kemper, the Headrush, anything, I do tend to use the crunch channel of an amp overdriven as opposed to whatever the highest gain option channel would be on that amp, because I just find that for recording you get a little bit of a fuller sound by using the crunch channel. It's not so compressed, and I think when you're recording stuff and it's going to go through multi-stage compression, mastering, all that stuff, starting out with just a bit more of an open sound with a bit more kind of latitude to play with, I think is maybe a bit of a better starting point. So what I've actually used to record has been the crunch channel of the Powerball. You can see the settings are mostly similar. Again, I'm using the brand new S1 drive pedal with about 20% drive in there and the other two settings maxed out. Typical settings of just a bit of a compressor. Again, if we go into the amp model, gain is not that ridiculously high, like 65%. The bright channel is on because I find that the crunch channel is just a little bit darker than the high lead channels, and there's a little bit of post EQ just to bring out a little bit more of those kind of high mids. So again, you can hear that compared to the high lead channel, it's just slightly more open sounding, and I'm really happy with how that's come out recorded, and once I've added like an effects chain to it and all that type of thing. Now, of course, the ENGL Powerball 2 is renowned as a high gain monster, and rightly so. However, owners of the amp will tell you that it also has an incredibly sparkly and crisp clean channel. It's really quite a sterile clean sound, and Headrush 2.4 update, they have included an amp model for the clean channel that I think is bob on, like certainly tallies with my experience of the ENGL heads in real life. So here's how the clean channel sounds purely into the IR with no effects, and I'll show you in a minute how it fares once you add in some flavor, so chorus, reverb, all that type of thing. But here's how it sounds just raw. So just proper, like sterile, crisp, like, to be fair, I think that type of just ultra clean channel is just a perfect platform for just adding a ton of effects to, because you're going to retain like the note clarity and that type of thing. So here's how it sounds with some of my all-time favorite kind of ambient stuff within the Headrush system. So a chorus up front, an offset, 300 and 500 millisecond delay, and the 11 reverb at the end. Just a real nice, like crisp, like, you know, kind of 80s like sound. I mean, that's really my jam, to be honest, when it comes to clean stuff. So that's the amp, crispy, sparkly, clean. Now it can do a decent breakup tone as well. So if we go into the amp settings, we can see that I do have the bright setting switched on. Now the gain is only at 20%. So if we up that to something like, let's go for 80. Now we're talking. Now we're talking like the cult 1986 Love album. You know what I mean? Oh man, I could just sit here and just mong out on that all day. Sounds great, right? So that is the Headrush 2.4 firmware update. Absolutely check this out if you own any of the Headrush systems, MX5, Gigboard, Pedalboard. It all works equally well with all of them. Special thanks to Headrush for supplying me this firmware early. Long may these updates continue. I know that they are kind of few and far between to some people, but with each update, I must say that what they add, it really is kind of quality over quantity. You know, the last update was 2.3, which added an acoustic simulator, another new amp model, and a bunch of extra pedals. So long may the support for this unit continue from Headrush. Thanks very much for watching this video. Don't forget to grab the free download of these 3 rigs in the video description. If you found this video useful and you enjoyed it, you're definitely going to enjoy the other content on the channel. Think about chucking me a subscribe because it helps me and encourages me to keep making more content like this for you. Take care of yourselves. I will see you next time.